Today was supposed to be Tyre Tuesday, but I quickly realized that 90 seconds wasn't going to be enough. So welcome back to the long dormant YouTube channel and let's talk tires. I got a ton of DMs and in-person questions about why on earth I would switch from Michelin to Pirelli. And I get it, there is a lot of misinformation around tires, especially the brands and especially the sub-brands, some of it even from me. It becomes painfully obvious that people talk at manufacturer level and not even the sub-brand of the tire. So every Michelin and every Pirelli are equally good or bad. But of course we know that isn't true. And prior to making this video, I hadn't actually realized how difficult it had become to both find a review on whether a brand is good or not, a specific tire is good or not, and even to shop within the different tiers of tires. This is all confusing enough. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about each of the manufacturers, the brands within them, and the different variants of tires and use cases for each of those, and how you should compare like for like. I've created my own tiering and laid it out in a way that makes sense to me, but if you have any questions, post a comment below. My first step in making sense of all this madness is to take each of the brands under each of these manufacturers and put them into one of three tiers: the Halo tier, the Value tier, and the Budget tier. The first tier is the Halo tier. This is what you see in F1, DTM, basically anything that's plastered on the side of a race car or onto the sidewall of one of these cars. This is the tier that every car guy really wants on their cars, partially because it's on race cars and partially because they're usually the highest levels of performance. They also do the heaviest lifting because it ranges from something like a track tire all the way to something that you'd find on a minivan. So you see where the confusion comes in. You can have an SUV that has a Michelin Pilot Sport 5 on it, or you can have a sports car that has something very track focused like the Cup 2 on it. And the opinion you may have on Michelin varies wildly based on your use case. I always love hearing stories from guys who've never been on track or never pushed the limits of their cars, telling you how they can tell major performance differences between tires on the street. The reality is, with most tires, including the track focused tires, you're going to have some minor preferences in terms of performance, how it makes the car feel, the slightly stiffer or slightly softer sidewall, but you're never going to really find the limits of grip or actual handling characteristics of these things on the street. Brand and preference, as well as looks, play more of a role than we'd like to admit, even in the premium tiers. It is okay to have slight preferences either way in terms of comfort, lifespan, and of course, how the tire looks. For instance, Michelin has this cool velvety effect on the sidewall, which everybody seems to love. Then we get to the mid-tier, where there is a solid value proposition behind most of the brands, with a great blend of road noise, wet handling, and other characteristics that make it easy to live with on a day-to-day basis and in all kinds of road conditions and weather conditions. You do see some crossover of brands from the Halo tier into this segment. And you will spot some Potenzas and Pilot Sports, but then you start to see brands like Latitude and Primacy coming through, as well as Turanzas, Alenzas, and a whole host of others from other manufacturers. You have the Budget tier, the land of false economy. These tires have significantly worse performance, road noise, and other characteristics. Now that we've unpacked the tiers, we're going to focus in on the high performance Halo segment and break that down into use cases. Start with high performance road tires, which are best for daily driven cars. These have low noise, great braking, fantastic wet performance, and you'll never really find their limits on the streets. Ultimately, tires degrade in two ways. They either wear out, which is where your trade wear ratings come in, or they age out, which is where the actual compound of the rubber degrades whether you use the tire or not. Supercar owners and garage queen owners already know what I'm talking about. This is where Pirelli gets its bad rep, because how these tires age is very, very different between the brands. So they all start out with really good performance, and this is where they get the really great reviews from when reviewers go out and review them fresh. They tend to degrade much more quickly than the equivalent Michelin, Bridgestone, or Goodyear. And being fitted as standard equipment to many high-performance, seldom used, very exotic cars doesn't help with this perception. Which is why dozens of you decided to ask me why on earth I was switching from Michelin's to Pirelli. Next up are road tires that you can use for track days. These are things that I use on cars like my Alfa 4C. This is a sweet spot for somebody like me who wants to hop into a car, drive to the racetrack, have some fun and drive back. On track, the difference between these and regular street tires is night and day. You're looking at a couple of seconds per lap improvement, and you'll be able to keep a lot of the guys on standard tires in much faster cars at bay. But here's a bit of a reality check. If you drive a heavy, powerful car like an F90 M5, these tires won't last long. And on something very light and track focused like the 4C, you might find they last longer than you think. After many track days and breakfast runs, these cup shoes have actually aged out rather than worn out. The last category I'm going to talk about are track-focused tires that you can use on the road for short periods of time, usually just getting from your house to the track. Now, could you daily drive these? Sure, but your car's going to sound like it's got broken wheel bearings or broken diff. It really is going to be annoying to drive it every day. To get the most of these, you need proper brake fluid, proper suspension, very aggressive suspension settings, and even then you're going to find the limits of other parts of your setup. I won't dive into race-only slicks, but if you're dealing with those, you already probably know what you're talking about. You don't want to be driving for extended periods of time on a track-specific set of tires because they are susceptible to going through heat cycles, and you don't want to be on track when you reach the limits of the compound. Ask me how I know. So what can we take out of this very long, very convoluted video? Well, you can't really generalize by manufacturer. Some manufacturers are going to do really well on certain classes and certain use cases. Others are going to suck. So you can't really say Michelin is king or Pirelli sucks. It's not that simple. What you can do is compare tires within the same class, used for the same purpose, and against certain metrics that matter. When it comes to metrics, it's pointless worrying about the lifespan of a track-focused tire. It's also pretty pointless worrying about the lap times you'd get out of an SUV tire. Also take reviews and ratings with a pinch of salt. Loads of people are paid for reviews. Loads of people are incentivized to have reviews. And all of these reviews tend to happen on fresh tires with the exception of a few. The other aspect to this is the performance figures themselves. It is entirely possible that you will click with a tire better than the reviewer has, or it suits your car better than the test car. So also take these results with a grain of salt. Your results in the real world might vary. So why did I switch to Pirelli? Well, I wanted to try a different class of tire in the form of the Corsa. I didn't really have much of a mileage requirement, and I was just curious. I'll probably switch back to Michelin's when these are done. Saying Pirelli sucks or Michelin is king means nothing without context. It really depends on the segment you're talking about and how the tire has been used. Hopefully this clears up some myths, and if you like this breakdown, drop me a comment and let me know if you want to deep dive into value and budget tires as well.